Okay, so you have made a pile of granny squares, and now it's time to start putting them together so that they can become something bigger. So if we look at a square, let me bring it up closer, you can see one side is kind of smooth, and one side is kind of more bumpy textured. So this one you can kind of see more of these like little loopy bits. Over here it's laying flat. This is technically the front side, and this is the back. It doesn't matter as long as you match up your squares so that all of the same side are together. So if we look at this pair that I've already sewn together, you can see that the smooth side is facing up on both of them, and the bumpy side is the same on both of them. So it doesn't matter as long as you do all your squares the same, it does not matter. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna lay mine down with this smooth side next to each other. Okay, and then I'm gonna decide which one of my long tails I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use the red one. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it on my yarn needle. Okay, and then I'm gonna turn it so that corner is at the bottom. And then I'm going to make sure that this tail is not on the same side, that it's on a different side out of the way. And I'm gonna make sure I've got both my sides together, and then I'm gonna make a sandwich. So I put both of my right sides together. So if I look at this, I've got bumpy, and then if I flip it over, I've got bumpy. Now we're gonna line them up. Now I always like to find like the little corner, and I stick my finger in it. So see what I did? I found the corner, and then this corner I stick my finger in it so that they line up. And you'll see that there's these little sets of loops that run across your square. So first I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna find my inside loop. So see, here's inside loop, outside loop, inside loop, outside loop. So I'm gonna go through inside loop, and I'm gonna tie a knot. I like to use knots because they are secure. So I just pulled it through, and you see I have this little loop here. It's kind of twisty. And then I'm just gonna stick my needle through this loop and pull, and it's gonna make a little knot, tidy it up. And we're gonna do this a whip stitch style. So we're gonna do the inside of those little loops. And if things are working well, it's gonna match up and you're gonna have the same number on both sides. So I like to take my finger and stick it into my next gap so that they're lined up there, and then I kind of hold it. And then I'm gonna go inside loop. So see, here's my inside loop and my outside loop. So I'm gonna go inside loop, inside loop. So I've got one red and one green. I'm gonna pull my yarn through, and then I'm gonna bring it back towards me and do the same thing again. Inside loop, inside loop, and bring it back around. All right. So now I've hit this hole, and then I'm gonna move my finger to the next hole. This helps me line up because we want these little post stitches, the little granny clusters, to line up with each other so that it looks nice and tidy when we unfold it. So you just keep going on your inside loops all the way across. Till we get to the end. Okay, so this is the last one that's above a double crochet. So when we get to the end in the corner, this is why it's nice to have two. We're gonna finish up in the first chain of this 2 chain gap. That'll leave the other chain to be the corner for the other side. So we'll go ahead and you go into the loops, just like you've been doing, and then you're just gonna go ahead and knot it off. This one, because it's not attached, I like to do twice. I'm rough on my blankets. Okay, so now to bury the tail, what you're gonna do is you're gonna come in to that stitch, and then you're just gonna kind of grab just these top loops. Carefully, you can open it up so you don't accidentally sew into your green one, your other one, until you can get to the corner, and then we can bury the tail just like we did for our middle by going inside that little loop there and going out, and then you skip one loop, otherwise you undo all your hard work. We want to confuse this tail so it can't figure out how to get out again. All right, go ahead and cut that. If we lay it out, we've got two. It'll bow in a little bit, but don't worry too much about that because you can kind of tug it out, and when we sew the other squares on, you'll watch that disappear. So here's two that I did before. Most of the time you're probably going to do like a checkerboard pattern if you're doing multiple colors. So let me get my tails off to the side here. These tails would be, if you were making a big blanket, you would keep going, like you would attach another granny square and you'd keep working across, but we're just making a small block today. So if your tail is long enough to get across, you could use it, but it might not be, so we'll talk about how to do that. So again, we make sure that we have the same sides up, whether it's the smooth side or it's the bumpy side. We get everybody lined up, and you can use some safety pins or something to kind of hold it together if you need to. And you want to pick a color, because you're going to have to cut a piece of yarn. You want to pick a color that's at least in your row. So this one I've got two of each, but if I had a lot more green than red, I would use the green. And you're going to go ahead and get yourself a nice long piece of yarn. Cut it off. You're going to put it on your yarn needle. And it's going to start pretty much like we did before. So you're going to make your sandwich where you put your right sides together. Okay. You're going to find your corner. Again, I like to stick my finger in it so I know exactly where it is. And then you're going to find that inner loop. So you know it's got the two that we do in the corners to make it around. So you're going to want to find the inner loop of chain number 2 and the inner loop of chain number 2. Oops, it wiggled. So get your inner loops. Okay. Now, then you're going to pull it almost through. Leave yourself a nice tail that's easy to get a hold of for burying. And go ahead and again, knot it. We don't want our blanket to fall apart the first time we use it. All right, you'll leave this guy here, you'll bury him later. All right, so we should be in that same one, and then you just do exactly like we did for putting the two together. You just keep going on those inner loop to inner loop over and over again. And then when you get to the end, you'll tie it off. Now, if you run out of yarn early, if you can, it's nice and tidy if you can do it like in one of these little junctures where everything comes together. It's a little bit easier because then you can do like a little crisscross situation. But if you can't, you can't. So if I were to run out of yarn here, like my tail wasn't long enough, I would just go ahead and do the knot like I would at the end and tie it off. And then in the next one, I would go ahead and go in those inner loops and make the knot like I did down here and just keep going with my new thread. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to bury an extra tail. But that's that. You just keep going over and over till your blanket is as big as you want it to be.